Good evening. Welcome to Primetime News here on TV1, coming to you live from our News First studios here in the capital of Colombo. I'm Disal Kapuge for News First, the voice of the people. Before we take a look at the stories in detail, let's first have a look at the headlines.
Over a dozen injured in Agbopura train derailment. Operations along the eastern route limited to Galloya. Human Rights Watch tells government to withdraw anti-terrorism bill. Dr. Jayampati Vikramanatha warns that the new anti-terror legislation can impact GSP Plus concessions. Festival advance for several principals to be slashed from April salary. Christians across the world mark Good Friday.
And now in your top story, 16 people, including women and children, were injured when a train bound for Trincomalee derailed in Agbopura on Friday the 7th. Railway operations along the eastern route were thereafter limited to Galloya.
The passenger and goods train from Galloya to Trincomalee derailed in the Kitul Utua area in Agbopura shortly after 1 p.m. The train was split into two in Galloya, with one section heading to Batiklo and the other heading to Trincomalee. The train bound to Trincomalee consisted of 4 compartments, and the second compartment had derailed and fallen off the tracks. The derailment caused serious damage to the tracks. Nine women, 5 men and 2 children were injured and admitted to the Kantale hospital. They were admitted to the Kantale base hospital. Among the injured men were the railway guard and his deputy. Sri Lanka Railways said that the restoration process on that particular route commenced on Friday evening and added that it would take days to complete the process. At the same time, operations along the northern route were restricted to Anuradhapura due to renovations. The renovation process commenced in January and is expected to be completed in June.
Human Rights Watch said the Sri Lankan government should withdraw the anti-terrorism bill. The Human Rights Watch also said the government of Sri Lanka's proposed Anti-Terrorism Act would empower the authorities to systematically violate fundamental human rights.
Human Rights Watch said on Friday that the Sri Lankan government should withdraw the anti-terrorism bill and ensure through consultations that any counter-terrorism legislation upholds international human rights standards. Meenakshi Ganguly, South Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said the proposed counter-terrorism law would permit the Sri Lankan government to continue to use draconian measures to silence peaceful critics and target minorities. Human Rights Watch said that until new counter-terrorism legislation that upholds human rights is drafted, the government should impose a full moratorium on the use of the PTA and take steps to repeal it. It said that Sri Lanka's international partners, including the United States, EU, Japan, India and others, should press for genuine reforms to ensure this bill meets Sri Lanka's international human rights obligations. Human Rights Watch said that the EU should make it clear that replacing the present counter-terrorism law with similarly abusive legislation could affect Sri Lanka's GSP Plus status.
President's Council Dr. Jayampati Vikramanatha, speaking on the Mawata discussion program, noted that the anti-terrorism bill would impact the GSP Plus concessions.
The
main concern with the new bill is the definition of terrorism. There is no international agreement on the definition of terrorism. The entire world must reach a narrow definition on terrorism. A strike is not a tea party. Strikes are carried out to inconvenience the state institutions. That is a right given to the trade unions, and they try to secure their demands as soon as possible. This now comes under the clause of obstructing essential services. When these combine, it is termed as terrorism. Next, it mentions disturbances caused to the health and the security of the public or a segment of society. Even if the doctors, nurses or technicians go on strike, when their services are termed as essential services, the strike poses a risk to the people's health and security. Therefore, it is termed as terrorism. My point is this: It is wrong to term strikes that do not impose fear as terrorism. To label a person as a terrorist, that person should be from an environment where serious fear is imposed, or it should be used to term a group that is trying to achieve its goals using terror. However, terming everything else as terrorism is of no use. We should either adopt the definition of terrorism mentioned by the EU. If this bill is passed, it would have a serious impact on the GSP Plus concessions. We should not be doing these things because of the GSP Plus, but also because it is not good for the country.
GSP Plus එක බලාගෙන නෙමෙයි අපි මේක මොකක් කරන්න ඕනේ මේක රටට.
The Professionals Trade Union Collective and the Collective of Government and Semi-Government Trade Unions demand that the government withdraw the anti-terrorism bill.
We demand that this bill be withdrawn immediately. When such bills were introduced in the past, no terrorist was arrested. The tabling of the bill was delayed out of shame, so withdraw it completely. All the trade unions, student movements and civil groups will meet on Monday to demand the government to immediately withdraw this bill.
ආණ්ඩුව විසින් ගෙන යන මේ අනීතික අසාධාරණ ජනපීඩක පනත් වහාම හකුලා ගන්නා ලෙස මේ රටේ මේ සමස්තය එකතු කරගෙන අපි දැන් යන්න ගමනක් සූදානම්.
This bill should be referred to as a state terrorism act. According to this bill, every citizen can be branded as a terrorist. Not only the clauses, but every single letter in this bill contains something bad. We hope to take this matter to court. When the trade unions voiced their concern, the tabling of this bill was delayed. This is their usual process. We are not prepared to play these games. As the National Trade Union Movement, we will come together against all these acts. We are ready to bring the entire country forward against this government. Delaying the tabling of this bill is not enough. It should be abolished, and the sale of national assets need to be suspended. We will be meeting on the 10th. And we will launch a program against the government's activities.
තවස දෙකට පටන් ගන්න මේ නියෝජ්‍ය සමුළුව මේ රටේ ආණ්ඩුවේ ක්‍රියාමාර්ගවලට එරෙහිව එකතු වෙන ගොඩනැගෙන පළල්ම ජනතා ව්‍යාපාරයස අපි ගොඩනගනවා. අපි රනිල්ට කියනවා.
Ranil cannot take back this bill. The bill was delayed because of the power of the trade unions. Therefore, we will ensure that the bill is withdrawn and you are also sent home.
ගෙදර යවනවා.
Saman Ratnapriya, the Director General of Trade Unions to the President, noted that there are certain shortcomings in the proposed anti-terrorism bill.
There are concerns over the definition of terrorism in this bill. There is confusion surrounding the definition of terrorism and other matters. That is why we have a parliament with 225 MPs. The MPs from different parties can address the shortcomings and present the necessary amendments. Just because a few people hold placards opposite a foreign mission, the amendments will not take place. That is just a joke. We can see there are certain shortcomings. They need to be rectified in order to move forward.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has also changed its stance on the anti-terrorism bill and arrived at the stance that it needs to be amended.
ලෝකේ ඕනෑම රටක ත්‍රස්තවාදයට එරෙහි පනවන නීති සහ පුද්ගල නිදහසත් මානව හිමිකම්.
In any country in the world, there is a dialogue regarding laws against terrorism and individual freedom and human rights. We must formulate laws while minimizing this. There is an issue in the bill. We can discuss the necessary amendments.
අපිත් වැරදිකරුවන් වෙන තත්වයකට මේ පනත් මේ යෝජිත පනත් කෙටුම්පත හරහා ඇති වෙනවා කියලා. එතකොට මේ මාධ්‍යයට එල්ල වෙන බලපෑම ඔබතුමාලා දෙදෙනාම දකින්නේ කොහොමද?
If we properly define what an act of terrorism is, we can resolve this issue to a great extent. We're not saying Sri Lanka does not need an anti-terrorism law, but our party is of the stance that if an anti-terrorism law is being introduced, it should not undermine the people's rights.
This is the response of the Samagijana Balavega to the anti-terrorism bill.
This anti-terrorism bill needs to be brought to ensure national security. But why are they trying to bring it? To imprison, give the death penalty, to proscribe and label as terrorists the individuals or groups that raise their voice against corruption, wastage and fraud. We know that if they really feel the necessity to control terrorism in this country, they would have directly intervened to help victims of the Easter Sunday attacks which happened 4 years ago. We don't see them doing anything of that sort. Today's laws will not affect those such as Cabral and the former government who destroyed the country and its economy. It is clear how they still have the freedom to act as they please in this country. Not just that, they seem to be getting involved in the governance of this country. The people of this country are demanding that those who made the wrong decisions be punished and what was stolen from the public be given back to the people.
Government and opposition groups have started to comment on a statement made by former Minister Rajitha Senaratne, who told reporters that if he is offered the post of Health Minister, he can perform well. If I am offered the post of Health Minister at any given time, I can take up that responsibility and remove all the obstacles.
ඇමතුමනි මේ ඊයේ දිනේ මාධ්‍ය සාකච්ඡාවක් තියලා හිටපු අමාත්‍ය රාජිත සේනාරත්න කිව්වා ඌ සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශ බාර ගන්න සූදානම් මම බාරගත්තොත් මේ තියෙන ගැටලු සියල්ලම නිම කරනවා කියලා මේ සම්බන්ධව ඔබතුමාගේ මතය මොකක්ද?
නෑ මම කැමති.
I do not wish to comment on that. I have been in 21 cabinets for the past 30 years. I never begged for a position.
මගේ අවුරුදු 30කට ආසන්න කාලයක් මම අවුරුදු 21ක් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ ඉඳලා තියෙනවා. මේ හිඟා කෑවේ නෑ කිසි දවසක එච්චරයි මට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ.
මේ ප්‍රශ්න උට පුළුවන් වේද මේ
මම එතුමා ගැන නෙමෙයි කියන්නේ මගේ ගැන මම කියන්නේ.
I am not speaking about him. I am speaking about myself. Do not misinterpret it. I have never begged for a post of minister in the past 21 years.
මම කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ ඉඳලා තියෙනවා.
රාජිත සේනාරත්න එතුමාම තමයි දූෂණයට විරුද්ධව කටයුතු කරනවා කිව්වේ. එතුමා තමයි
Rajitha Senaratne said he will work against corruption. He said the Rajapaksa money was in Dubai banks. I do not know for what reason he would want to join with the Rajapaksa clan linked to fraud and corruption. He says various things at various times. I am not sure what he is talking about.
සම්බන්ධ වෙනවද කියලා අපි දන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ එතුමායි කීක වෙලාවට කීකවා කියලා මම දන්නේ නැහැ රාජිත සේනාරත්න මහත්මයා මොකද කියන්නේ කියලා.
There is talk about the UNP and the SJB merging. We too have some insane people. They say various things to the media. Those over the age of 70 love them. They love to work with Ranil as ministers, but are afraid for the election. You must contest under Sajit or leave if you want to go solo. Sajit must also take a decision about them. We cannot allow them to act like this.
Ranil කැමතිකම් කරලා සජිත් එක ඡන්ද ඉල්ලන්න. ඒව වාණ ඒව ඉවරයි. ඒව ඉවරයි. සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්තයාට අපි කියන්න ඕනේ මේ අය සම්බන්ධව තීරණයක් ගන්න ඕන කියලා ඉවරලා. මොකද මේම නටන්න දෙන්න බෑ.
A Ugandan court charged a minister with several corruption offences connected to accusations of diverting metal roofing sheets meant to help residents. Prosecution of ministers for corruption is rare in Uganda, where stealing and the misuse of public funds and materials is routine. Karamoja, in a remote region bordering Kenya and South Sudan, is home to pastoral nomads vulnerable to frequent droughts and deadly cattle raids. Karamoja Affairs Minister Mary Goretti Kitutu was charged with several offences including loss of public property and conspiracy to defraud. The charge sheet said Kitutu diverted 14,500 roofing iron sheets to her own benefit and to the benefit of third parties. She pleaded not guilty to all the charges. After she was charged, Kitutu was remanded in custody and ordered to reappear in court on the 12th of April. Let's now cross over to a short commercial break and come back for more news.
2014 අපි විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ලෝක සුළං ජයග්‍රහණය කරපු අවස්ථාව ඉතාමත් විශේෂ අවස්ථාවක් ඉතාමත් සතුටුදායක අවස්ථාවක් අපි ඒ තරගාවලියට ගියේ කණ්ඩායමක් හැටියට ඉතාමත් එකමුතුව දැඩි අධිෂ්ඨානයකින් මේ තරගාවලිය ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා
2014 ICC 2020 ලෝක කුසලානයේ උරුමය සමගින් අපේ කේසර සිංහ රාවය මෙසේ ලොවට විරාජමාන කළ වගයි.
Good Friday, the Friday before Easter, is the day on which Christians annually observe the commemoration of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
Good Friday, the Friday before Easter, is the Christian day to commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus and his death at Calvary. For a period of 40 days from Ash Wednesday, devotees engage in a series of religious events leading up to Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is marked on the 9th of April this year. Her Good Friday service was led by His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, the Archbishop of Colombo, at St. Lucia's Cathedral in Kotahena.
අපි දන්නවා අපි ආත්මාර්ථකාමීත්වයෙන් යුතුව යම්කිසි පාපයක්.
We die inside when we commit a sin. It taints our image. The more we do good, the better life becomes. We can only enjoy the true meaning of life when we do not surrender to selfishness and sin. If we live according to justice and law, we can overcome the challenges. That is why Jesus was crucified, because he loved us. That is the greatest sacrifice. It is to do good for others.
ඒ ආදරයේ උපරිම පරිත්‍යාගය තමයි තමා අමතක කර අනුන් වෙනුවෙන් තමන්ගේ ජීවිතය පූජා කිරීමයි.
Pope Francis led a holy mass at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican on Thursday, with hundreds of faithful attending the service. The pontiff, who was wearing the white vestments, presided over the service that marks the beginning of the Easter Triduum, which leads up to Easter Sunday.
The principals' unions point out that they have been greatly inconvenienced due to the decision to cut off the festival allowance given to a group of principals in March from their April salary. This decision has been taken following the allegations that the related festival allowance has been given deviating from the financial circular.
A festival allowance of 10,000 rupees was given to public servants for the new year on the basis of recovery in 10 equal installments. In view of the current economic situation, the government decided not to give the relevant allowance to staff grade officers, but some principals representing that grade had received this allowance. The relevant payments have been made at the level of regional education officers. Taking this situation into account, the Sri Lankan Professional Principals Association sent a letter to the President on the 25th and requested that all the staff members be given the festival allowance. In response, the Treasury Operations Department of the Ministry of Finance had issued a letter to the Secretary of the Ministry of Education. It stated that the Ministry of Finance has released money for the payment of teachers' salaries in March 2023, but no money has been released for the payment of festival allowances. The Treasury Operations Department has emphasized in its letter that the Cabinet has decided that the relevant officials are personally responsible for acting against the State Budget Circular number 2/2023 and Cabinet decisions. Accordingly, steps have been taken to recover the festival allowance of 10,000 rupees paid in March in one installment.
The allowance along with salaries were deposited to the accounts of principals on the 20th. By the 22nd and 23rd, most of the zonal officers in Sri Lanka have issued a letter saying that they deposited it by mistake, and that since it was done by mistake, the entire 10,000 rupees will be charged at once from the salary of April. It is a very unfair and unkind act. Because that salary was withdrawn and spent in March, then when that 10,000 rupees is recovered through the salary of April, given the economic situation, the principals will be heavily inconvenienced.
The Union of Teachers and Principals Union says that although principals are treated per the graded status, they are not entitled to any additional stipends that are due to that level.
It has been decided not to give the festival allowance to the grade officers. But since the festival allowance is not paid to the grade officers, principals are also not being paid. We know that the Sri Lankan Principal Service has now been converted into a grade officer's service. Now, after being converted into a grade officer's service, the Principal Service does not have any privileges. Not even the administrative allowance or a telephone allowance is allocated. It is difficult for us to live with the 10,000 rupees being deducted from our salary on the 10th. Because of this, we request the President and the Ministry of Finance to give us the festival allowance of 10,000 rupees before the 20th of April. Crime is on the rise in Sri Lanka. We at News First keep a keen eye on incidents taking place around the country. Up next is our special segment dedicated to this, Crime Watch.
Crime Watch.
A 25-year-old woman was stabbed and killed while walking along the Ginihena Road in Kobbekaduwa in the Peradeniya police jurisdiction. Sri Lanka police said that the victim was heading to a preschool where she was employed on Friday morning and was attacked and killed at a lonely stretch some 400 meters from her house. Locals rushed her to the Bulletin hospital. Unfortunately, she was ruled dead upon admission. The victim was identified as 25-year-old Anjali Chapa, a preschool teacher from Murtalava, Peradeniya.
She left home at 7:15 in the morning. Her boyfriend called me after that and said something had happened to her. The last thing I heard was about a chain.
Detectives are yet to uncover details over the murder.
Crime Watch.
The past few harvesting seasons did not bring any smile to the faces of the Sri Lankan farmers, bringing a ray of happiness to our farmers who faced many challenges such as infestations, elephant attacks and the fertilizer crisis. The Sirasa Vasanta Udanaya 2023 will hopefully bring the joy of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year season to the Dehiyatta Kandiya farmers.
The Sirasa Vasanta Udanaya will take place on Saturday at the Mahavali grounds in Dehiyatta Kandiya, and the people from the Mahavali Sea Zone will receive the opportunity to engage in a series of events ahead of the New Year celebration. Dehiyatta Kandiya, which is a farming colony in the Mahavali Sea Zone, is located in the Ampara district in the eastern province of Sri Lanka, approximately 228 kilometers away from Colombo. This beautiful area, which is home to a dedicated farming community dedicated to enriching the country with harvest, is getting ready to celebrate the Sinhala and Tamil New Year in a grand scale for the first time in 25 years. Preparations are in place for traditional competitions such as the beauty pageant for the Aurudha Kumariya, and will feature a modern twist with volleyball and kabaddi games at the Mahavali grounds in Dehiyatta Kandiya. In addition, the village home, a concept that distanced from the community due to technological advances, can be experienced at the Sirasa Vasanta Udanaya.
We want to share the Sinhala and Tamil New Year and give them prizes for the events. This brings unity and renews relationships.
News First also came across the village youth gearing up ahead of the main festivities scheduled for Saturday.
වසන්තදානේ ටීම් මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකානු ගමේ ටීම් එකට තරගයක් බලන්න පුළුවන් අනිවාර්යෙන් දෙන්නවා.
සිරස අර්ධ කුමාරියට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න ආසයි. සිරස මේක මට ලොකු අවස්ථාවක් වෙයි කියලා හිතනවා.
අනිවාර්යෙන් හෙට තරගෙ දිනන්න මම බලන්න. එයාට පිස්සු දෙන්න ඕන. මම තමයි කරුක ජයග්‍රහණය දිනන්න උරු තරගෙ. දුකේදී සැපේදී අපි සියලු දෙනාටම ආශිර්වාදයක් වුණා සිරස. කන්න ගණනාවක් තිස්සේ අපි දුක් විඳ ගොවියෝ. අපි විඳ දුක් බෙදා හෙදා ගන්නට තමයි අද සිරස මාධ්‍ය ජාලේ මහා පණිවිඩයක් අරගෙන දෙහියත්ත කණ්ඩේ පොරවරේට ඇවිල්ලා සිංහල අවුරුදු සවුරු සමරන්න තමයි මේ පෙරමුණ.
ඇතර අපි හරි සතුටුයි. සෑංගෙවිලා තියෙන දක්ෂතා ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපිට.
වසර 25කට පස්සේ තමයි දෙහියත්ත කන්දේ ගොවි රජවරු නැවත සිරස වසන්ත උදානේ දකින්නේ. ගොවි රජවරුන්ගේ දූ දරුවන්ගේ පාප තරංග, කාන්තා පිරිමි, මැරතන් තරංග, පිහිනුම් තරංග, ඒ වගේම පිටියේ පැවැත්වෙන විවිධ තරංග සඳහා ගොවි මහත්තුරුන්ගේ දරුවන්ට ගොවි රජවරුන්ට සහභාගී වෙන්න අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා.
Several boat races and swimming events took place on Friday at the Veeralanda Vavar.
As a national body, we notice that less attention is given to safety. Today we received support from the organizers of the event. We are thankful for that. We want to share the Sinhala and Tamil New Year and give them prizes for the events. This brings unity and renews relationships.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නෑකම අලුත් කර ගැනීම තමයි අපිත් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මාධ්‍ය ජාලයක් හැටියට මහවැලියත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා. හෙට දිනේදී උදෑසන 7ට ආරම්භ වෙනවා.
The bicycle race will commence at 7 a.m. along with the marathon. The opening ceremony will be at 8 a.m. and from that moment the entire day will be filled with fun events. I invite the locals to join us with these festivities and witness the joy of the farming community.
මේ ප්‍රදේශ ජනතාවට ආරාධනා කරනවා සිරසි ටීවී නරඹන ඔබ සියලු දෙනාට ආරාධනා කරනවා මේ තරඟ පැවැත්වෙන ආකාරය සහ මේ ගොවි ජනතාව සතුටු වෙන ආකාරය සිරස ටීවී ඔස්සේ නරඹන්න අපත් සමග එකතු වෙන්න.
Sahara Flash, featuring a number of popular artists, will add colour to the night with their performances. The Mahavali Sea Zone is ready for the festivities tomorrow.
The chairman of the Lanka Satosa, Pasanda Yapa Abevardhana, said that special discounts will be provided for over 500 products for the festive season via Satosa outlets.
Within 2 weeks, we reduced 300 rupees from the prices of 12 essential items. 10 days ago, we reduced 250 rupees from the price of 9 other products. After 1 year, we reduced the price of a kilogram of onions by 100 rupees last night. We can sell a kilogram of onions for 97 rupees. Canned fish, which was sold for 845 rupees, can now be sold for 490 rupees. A kilogram of flour, which was sold for 420 rupees, can be sold for 225 rupees. In addition, we have discussed with the suppliers and decide to award discounts for the festive season for around 500 products. This will last for the entire festive season.
The International Monetary Fund chief Kristalina Georgieva said China had been helpful in reaching a debt relief deal for Sri Lanka.
International Monetary Fund chief Kristalina Georgieva said that about 60% of low-income countries are already in or at risk of debt distress, and about 25% of emerging economies are at high risk and facing default-like borrowing spreads. Georgieva said she told China's new top economic official, Li Qiang, that China must accelerate its work to reach debt restructuring agreements for countries like Zambia, Ghana and Ethiopia. Georgieva, who met with Li and other top Chinese officials during a visit to China last month, said on Thursday that she found Li very approachable and pragmatic, and he assured her that he wants China to play a constructive role in resolving debt relief cases.
And now in international news, US President Joe Biden's administration has blamed its chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan on his predecessor, Donald Trump, in a new report.
A 12-page summary of the report says Biden was severely constrained by Trump's decisions, including a 2020 deal with the Taliban to end the war. But the report also acknowledges that the government should have begun the evacuation of civilians earlier. Trump responded that the White House was playing a disinformation game. The deadly pullout in August 2021 ended America's longest war. 13 US soldiers and nearly 200 Afghans were killed as US troops scrambled to evacuate more than 120,000 people in a matter of days.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News here on TV1. To follow us for more details of these stories, log on to our award-winning website www.newsfirst.lk and follow us on our social media platforms YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe, take care and have a good night.